Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. On today's episode, we are actually going to add some cleanup crew to the tank. In the last episode, you can kind of see, here in this corner right here, there is some algae growing. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that a cycle is happening. It's just algae's gonna grow. Just like algae grows in my big display for the snails to eat, algae is gonna grow in, any other tank as well. And in order to manage that, we do need a cleanup crew. And today, what we kind of wanted to go through was, what animals I like to add to my tank in order to manage algae, pests, whatever, little things that need to be eaten in the tank. Now, first on my list are going to be the most popular things in tanks just because they're so quirky. Are these little hermit crabs. So these are little blue-legged hermit crabs. These ones are extra small. My local fish store gave them to me just because, it is a little tank, so it makes more sense to have little crabs. Now, they do get pretty big, and I will need to get them shells at some point so they can molt and get bigger. Obviously, with hermit crabs, they use the shells of dead snails, and they don't actually grow shells themselves. But I generally like the blue-legged ones. Some people say the blue-legged ones are mean and the red-legged ones are better. I've never honestly seen a difference, so I don't really care. But these guys are really good just to kind of pick around, get a little detritus, and, you don't really see their use too much, I would say. But they definitely do provide some life, some movement, and they do obviously pick at, some types of algae to eat. So they are going to be pretty useful in a reef tank. So we're going to add these 10 little guys right here and just plop them right into the tank. Now, next up, we would preferably like something that can maybe churn up the sand bed a little bit, and most people end up going with the Nassarius snails because they are fairly cheap, but I do find Nassarius snails, they don't really eat algae. They are really more carnivorous type of snails, and since I honestly probably won't be feeding too much meat items into this tank, it'll be mostly just whatever algae that the snails can eat. I prefer not to go that route just because I don't want them to die. The next best option, which I think honestly is a better option, is going to be a conch, which is this little guy right here who is super scared right now. And I have actually quite a couple in my tank. I have one here. They've been in my tank for quite a while. As you can see, the top of their shelves are pretty much just covered in coralline. And these little guys, on top of burrowing into the sand, they do eat algae, just like a regular old snail. So on top of burrowing into the sand, this little guy does eat algae as well, which checks off a lot of boxes for me and makes it overall just kind of a better pick. Now, they don't churn up the sand bed super well, but they do, they do well enough. So for this tank, we're just going to add one for now. We may add a second at some point. It just depends how much algae we're going to have in the tank to eat, because, they do eat algae and I don't want to starve them to death. So we're going to go ahead and plop this little guy in as well, and we'll move on to the next one. And finally, for the main algae control in this tank, so what that's going to mean is cleaning the glass, cleaning the sand beds sometimes, and definitely cleaning the rock. You do need a snail that is going to be able to, kind of do everything. Now, the most preferred of choice is going to be the turbo snail, which is one of these guys right here. They get super big. Now, one thing I find about turbo snails, some end up doing really well in a tank and some don't, oddly enough. Sometimes I'll get quite a few and they'll just die immediately upon entering the tank. And then the ones that do get really big like this, one thing I really don't like about them, even though they are great algae eaters, is that they tend to flip over. And when they flip over, they can't flip themselves back. So if, for example, I go on a vacation and, the tank is pretty much just watching itself, I unfortunately, might not be there. One of these little guys flips over and it either dies or, maybe one of my wrasses makes a meal out of it. So there is one better option for my tank, and that is going to be these little guys right here, which are red-banded trochuses. And there's kind of two kind of trochuses. There's like the regular ones that kind of look like Astrea snails, which are like white. Then there's these ones which have the nice little bands on them. And these ones I like for quite a few reasons. Number one, they're just pretty much as good of cleaners as the turbo snails. Number two, they will actually spawn in the tank, so these can actually make more babies of themselves versus something like a turbo snail. I've seen a turbo snail spawn in a tank, though I've never actually had them, spawn in this tank myself. And then lastly, these guys, when they get flipped over, they can actually flip themselves back. So if they fall over like the turbo snails do, I don't have to worry. What they kind of do is they kind of just like whack their meat really fast to the side and kind of flip themselves back over, which is super cool. So, in that same case where I'm on a vacation, I don't have to worry because these guys will be able to flip themselves back over. So we're going to go ahead and get these guys into the tank as well and just let them do their thing. All right, so that is pretty much it for today as far as the cleanup crew that's going to be added to the new little Nano. As far as the main display though, we did want to add one more fun little critter today, and that is going to be a Tuxedo Urchin, which you can kind of see right there. And the reason I want to add the Tuxedo Urchin is a lot of people do say they do eat coralline algae. I have had a Tuxedo Urchin before, and it did do just that. So, just adding something fun that's a little abnormal into the tank that's, still going to be helpful. It does seem like it'll be fun. So what we're going to do is just grab the little guy and plop him right in there. So we do have him right here. He's if you can see right there, a cute little spiky guy. He does have what's left of a Monty cap on top of his head, but that's okay. Actually, you know what? We'll go ahead and remove that just so he can start a clean, fresh life. But the little guy is, he's a little fragile. He's a little bit spiky. It's like a bunch of little needles. But he is super cute. He's about the size of maybe 3/4 of a golf ball. But yeah, hopefully he does super well in this tank. We're just going to slowly let him off. I don't want to just drop him right into the tank, but we'll just leave him right there. He's going to slowly, kind of get acclimated to the tank, and hopefully we'll see him cruising around, eating algae, doing his thing. But yeah, that is pretty much it for today's episode. Hopefully you enjoyed the very little amount of information about these little critters and the critters that I prefer to put in my reef tanks based on, what they're able to do. But thank you guys as always for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next episode.